just want to quickly summarize. Like it's nice to kind of a summary of what we talked in terms of gender, because I want to move on to the sexual yoga and sexuality quickly. So as I was talking about, based on her research, humans actually taught and freely introduced new practices and insights that they discovered in their meditations. So females, women's practitioners took a leadership in terms of teaching, which is quite surprising in Tibetan context. And then in terms of passion and divine ecstasy, women imparted their teaching to their female practitioners. Interesting. Female teachers taught special practice to the other female practitioners. Dakinis, yoginis, heroines, women with spiritual attainment, and all these terminologies, they came from India. Thirdly, in terms of sexual yoga and the yoga of union, these are equal. What's the term? Reciprocity? Equal, male and female. It said, in the sense presented in the Tibetan tradition, it's like a male take a female consort or something like that. Then consort is like a little more passive. But actually, women were among the early teachers of the sexual yogas. Female teachers taught sexual yoga. So yoga of union provides the means of women. Yes, in terms of sexual yoga, we are talking about advanced practice for women and men, both, to deconstruct their conventional selves, egos, me, together to experience the emptiness and the bliss, which I was talking about. Dakini is pointing out always emptiness and bliss. Then in this process, partners, female or male, both interchange, experience the divinity of the opposite partner. So that's the third point. Sexual yoga, yoga of union, female participation was very positive, or the involvement quite strong, collaboration equal, presence of a female practitioner. Then fourth one is the respect and worship. So in terms of doctrinal or the philosophical barrier, there was no barriers to women's complete participation in Tantra, or disability or innate incapacity, inferiority to men for enlightenment. See, in Tibetan terminology, female means keme. Me means inferior or lower. Ke refers to the man sometimes, or the person. Inferior person was the female. So those kind of terminology. But in Indian context, there was no such a thing, in the sense that the doctrinal or the philosophical aspect completely equal. So in that case, this kind of what you call the female inferiority cannot attribute it to tantric doctrine, but must be thought in cultural forces or institutional factors and social patterns. We see this Yabum form, Buddha couple in union. Sometimes male deities embracing female deity, but also there was a kind of case that female embracing male. See, thing is that we all are complete in one level, female principle, male principle, full complete. In terms of completeness, a state of primordial wholeness and completeness of being. So this Yabum form is expressing that whole completeness. Then in terms of this vision of automatic humanity, so this mundane human desire, women and men try to restore that wholeness. So that's called sexual desire, mundane. Yeah, here I just gonna connect to this, what she said. By virtue of having a female body, a woman radiates the feminine qualities more strongly. And it is natural for her to yearn for the masculine qualities. Similarly, it is natural for men to yearn for the female quality to fulfill the completeness. Ordinarily, sexual desire creates enormous confusion regarding our embodiment because we are already whole, but then we don't know, we didn't connect it. So then, which become a great obstacle to our awakening. One way to wholeness in Vajrayana is to discover through physically the interrelatedness of the masculine and the female qualities on all levels of experience. Then various practices bring into union or dualistic tendency that perpetuate our suffering. Then last one, in terms of gender, is a spiritual independence. Female practitioners attain a certain physiological advantage and authority in the tantric movement. But fact is, not have used their power to dominate. So male dominated. Then, but those female practitioners taught other women independently from men. So that's just a little summary about the gender. Is there anything in terms of gender? Is that a little bit of surprising or clear or kind of encouraging, empowering? Yeah. This is her contribution to this field. However, of course, always have some danger, especially in terms of context of Tantra presented this way. It's nice to bring into the context, not to pick one part of it, especially sexual yoga, she really going to this, then bring into our ordinary kind of relationship. I mean, we will talk, I hope we can get into those things, how we can make use of this kind of teaching into our day-to-day ordinary things. The thing is, especially in this culture, the powerful myth, you can say, myth in our culture tells us that happiness lies in romantic love. If only I find this soulmate, then I'm happy, I'm perfectly fine. Maybe even when we practice, deep part of ourselves, we have that yearning because we don't feel whole. I mean, unconsciously. And they yearn for this really romantic love. So we dream there is that one out there, our soulmate, who will fulfill me, and bring me lasting happiness. So we are longing for belonging. We don't feel whole in ourselves. We sense an emptiness inside. Then we try to fill instead of going to the resting in that. Then we want to desperately feel it. Something is missing. However, that's where practice comes in. So relationship informed by awakened awareness, or many ways to say it. If we connect to that, I always invite you to rest in that or connect that beyond the language, but this awakened awareness, which does not come and go, never divorce you, never separate from you, regardless, unconditionally loving presence. So if your relationship is informed by that awakened awareness, is altogether different. Because that is relationship is not born out of pain or dependency or fear of loneliness. We all those kind of feel. But it's more like it's born out of celebration. In awake awareness, it is understood that we are each unique expression of one source, total freedom, and totally alone. In solitude, I'm least alone. I like that one. If you are able to rest in that awakened awareness, if you know that glimpse in that, you can be completely alone and then be able to celebrate this kind of relationship, living in the full autonomy of wholeness. Our relationships are then imbued primarily with appreciation, not attachment. So in that sense, in our context, in our level, sexuality with a true and trusting partnership is a way to access the primordial or primal, a place where, for example, wildness or nakedness can emerge and give expression to itself. Then we can soar, we can fly like a ducklings in a relationship, however they go. When we love in freedom, so if we don't love in freedom, we get caught. We can go deeper in terms of sexual yogas in advanced practice. They are asking us to see, look, or contemplate into the nature of passion, nature of desire. She is saying that here, contemplating the nature of passion is an important part of the spiritual path. So then she is talking about the three ways to contemplate on nature. There are traditionally three ways to relate to the nature of passion. In the yogic tradition, we are talking about advanced practice of Tantra. First, in creation phase, like some of you practice, creation phase practice, one can visualize the Yabuyum deities, Katanka, holding this trident, right? That represents Heruka. So it's not actually your Yabuyum in this sense, but actually more empowering for me. Anyway, that's the one way to connect to the nature of passion. The second way is one can practice Tummo. So this is also highest yoga tantra practice, main practice in terms of completion stage in Vajrayogini journey. So Tummo practice, or the generation of internal heat through the subtle body practice of the vital breath, moving into the central channel and so forth. Of course, Indian tradition, Kundalini, or those practice as well. But here, this is one of the six Naropa, first one, kind of basis of six yoga of Naropa. Then third one is this one, sexual yoga. One can practice so-called sexual yoga, karma mudra, with a consort, realizing the true nature of passion in all of these forms, transformed. So you have to know the purpose why we do this. Transform ordinary passion into this ordinary passion, which is strings attached, ego involved, into the basis for the experience of great bliss, BLISS, Mahasukha, which greatly accelerate the removal of emotional and conceptual obscuration in our path. So our journey is a removal, kind of we are uncovering more and more, right? Very important. In India, this tapas, the word tapas is a heat, but at the same time, they practice this aesthetic practice, not to have a sexual thing, but then so much heat create. Actually, that's the ideal thing in the sense that this consort sexual, I'm talking about this level of practice, assist to create the heat, then move the prana around, and then melt the essential drops. Then get in touch with deepest dimension of awareness consciousness. Yeah, my point is that celibacy important to see that tensions Actually, tension itself is so juicy. In a sense, how can we hold or honor the vows? But how can we honor the vows of celibacy, for example, vow of monk and nuns? Then at the same time, honor the appreciate or respect, honor the fundamental frame of desire without causing the suffering for oneself and others. That's kind of question. So something to do with that addiction or juiciness, the concentration and this passion, directing that passion into, we are talking about awakening and freedom. So it's interesting to understand the nature of passions. Actually, this is a completely open doorway to non-conceptual and warmth, actually, warmth, love in that sense. Use everything on the path. Sewa. Mimetsewe tekchen chenrezi, that's one of the mantra, right? Ramason covered. Mimetsewe. Objectified less. That's such a word. Less compassion or desire. So me and others. Anything came up for you? Kind of uncomfortable subject or very curious and what this means to my journey?
Khandrila, what's coming up for me is how the experience of desire, that passion, can, and I'm not sort of talking necessarily about a sexualized passion, can be such a, if held in awareness and held with sort of right view, can be such a benevolent force, if you will. So I guess what I'm getting is, what I'm tuning into is the experience of not necessarily the, the early Buddhist classical teachings that are like, we're to snuff out desire at any, it's really for me about working with in a conscious way, whether it's sexual or otherwise, if that makes sense. That's kind of what's coming up for me.
Yeah, this quote, I might have quoted before, but from Tantra, Mother Tantra, it's love enjoyed by the ignorant become bondage. Love enjoyed by the ignorant becomes bondage. That very same desire or love tasted by one with understanding brings liberation, brings freedom. The same desire, same love. Then enjoy all the pleasures of love fearlessly for the sake of liberation. So that's also go back to this motivation.
Yes.
Embraced by this or the imbued by this context of liberation for all beings. In Tantra, we don't do kind of hesitant or half-heartedness. No, we completely go for. I like this room is, I often quote this, gamble everything for love. Half-heartedness cannot reach into the majesty. So we go wholeheartedly for the sake of freedom, whatever we do. These subjects are not a comfortable subject in a sense. People kind of either skip or glorify or ignore or overemphasize. We are talking about this fundamental nature of humanness, and most fundamental instinctive emotional tendency qualities that is strong within us. Then thing is what the Buddha taught is what to do with that. Spirituality is what to do with passion, in a sense, what to do with desire. That's the kind of instinctive feeling we have.
It's such a precious teaching when I really stop and think about it. The Buddhist teachings about passion, just because this when you think about sexuality, you're talking about it's a primal, instinctive human act. And I also think that it may be one that we have the most conditioning around. Just the, you know, the messages that you get, and at least in our Western culture about sexuality. Maybe that's why it's so uncomfortable. It's so intimate and it's got lots of judgments around it. And it's, for instance, to share her experience, I think that took a lot of courage to do, I would imagine. Anyway, maybe not so much at our age anymore. But anyway, I just think the whole subject is loaded in our culture. And when we read about the Buddhist teachings and Tantra practice around it, we bring all that with us into that.
Actually, yeah, as a practitioners, we appreciate this kind of conversation. And the invitation is to know the energy toward the nature of that itself, passion or desire or love or sexualities, without acting out or not acting out or not repressing, you know, these habitual patterns that you know, human we do.
I think that's why, you know, sex being sacred and the what say is taboo, you know, and there's so many in our culture taboos around women in general, and I think in many cultures, and I think that's what the Dakinis and Maciek, for me, I mean, that whole thing of taking everything on the path is, it's like, it is wholesome, you know, it's wholesome, as you say, Kandala, if you don't act out.
Yeah, desire, sexuality or sexual desire or passion itself is no problem. Itself is not a problem. Actually, that's just what it is. We all have that. Actually, each of us has a desire to be here to for freedom, whatever way. So we here. The fundamental desire is okay and good itself. What makes it possible to practice, to develop this power and the strength and the empathy, no? The desire. So we usually use passion or desire, the habitual way in a long place. That become problem. Habitual patterns cause suffering, no? Then we repeat. Then we define that my life.
So what's the wisdom, you know, like I'm trying to remember with anger or aversion, it's mirror-like wisdom.
Yeah.
And with passion, is it
discerning or
discerning?
Awareness.
Oh yes,
Also different. You know, when you have a really passion, you know, partner or something, very picky, no? You know exactly, you know, what you want, what you don't want. You know, that's sort of discriminating, or discerning wisdom. And the Vajra Yogini is a practice for that. To really get to know the nature of passion. This red, fiery ladies. And certain deities, for example, Shinhamukha or something, blue body, that's a more like a nature of anger, you know, connected anger. And so forth. Each deity has some kind of speciality to help you to really connect the nature. Then, of course, guiding you to the deepest dimension of who you are. Okay, so of course, we're going to explore more, especially when we get into the highest yoga tantra. This is a territory of highest yoga tantra practice. So we're going to continue, but so intimacy, awakened relationship. I hope I was able to convey a little bit about this relationship, how we can bring this subject of relations, because it's so important, right? I often talk about that. We kind of injured by relationship, but then we restore through relationship. And all our relationship, we are relating to not only human to human, but everything relationship. then how we can make it with the awakened relationship, partners with a beginner's mind, looking at, not as the reflected version of your fixed idea version of a partner. Every day you're looking at. No, just like a expression of bliss and emptiness, this continuous unfoldment of that expression. Then every time look at fresh, your friend, every phenomena, everything. No matter how mundane looks like, same old looks like. Do we feel this miracle in the ordinary things?
Feeling about the quality of love when, like, whether it's between two people or just that deep, however that kind of manifests, that really is taking us into timeless awareness. That is a vehicle to really open into awareness, right? And I feel like that's, yes, we can get caught in all our funky human stuff, which we all do, right? I mean, I first in line, but really, that's the opening, right? And I just am I feel like we are so fortunate as humans to have that capacity. I think we can get stuck as all the stuff around sexuality, and we kind of turn sex into just a discharge moment, if you will. It's so much more.
Yeah, good point. Dakinis Whisper really encouraged to get in touch with this humanness, love, or even brokenheartedness. I'm kind of encouraging to let your heart break, and they live with a broken heart. So
I think you have modeled that so beautifully, Kanjala. It's one I just so appreciate that, in the sense of opening to our humanness and our vulnerability in deeper and deeper ways. And I find that such a precious gift from you. It really helps me in my own life, when I have those moments of, just really powerful and deep, hard experiences. And so I just want to say thank you for that. I feel that helps me come forward and just be braver with my own experience.
Yeah. Then in return, I'm thanking those yogis and yoginis, awakened teachers. So they experience brokenheartedness. They knew what the brokenhearted means, and they love wholeheartedly. Then they broke their heart fearlessly. Compassion kind of geyser or wellspring of the love and compassion coming from that, the experience of pain, totally wholeheartedly. So we dive into that.